American Jewish story, specifically. Right? Lots of Jewish museums, but this is the only one that's specifically about the American Jewish story. And we are particularly fortunate in the location. I don't know how they manage it, but you know, if you've done some of your touring around, you know that we've got Independence Hall right out there, where the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution was signed and ratified. We've got the Liberty Bell right here as well. And also, over here, you've probably all been here too, this is really the original White House, because this was where George Washington lived. And what is interesting, and it's been excavated, and when they excavated it, they found the slave quarters of 19 slaves, which I don't think anybody knew about, and apparently wasn't quite legal at the time, because, yeah, it's a whole story behind it. I won't diverge too much into that, but that's a story in itself. And I think it's also important to note that, well, I'll note that the Liberty Bell was actually made in England rather badly, I think, because it cracked twice, right? It cracked twice. So that's a nice little metaphor, because a lot of what we're talking about is a story of liberty, of aspiration, and what we might call imperfect freedom, the few cracks that there are, right? So that complicated story, and it has an inscription on it, proclaim liberty throughout the land and to all the inhabitants thereof, which is a biblical quote, of course. Yes, yes. And the main themes of the museum are you joining us? Yes. Welcome, welcome. I'm just starting on the introduction, yes. And actually, I've just asked you, because I asked everybody else, where are you hailing from and what brings you into the museum?
We're from the UK.
Just like history.
We like history, yeah.
Yes, yes, yes. Okay. Well, you came in just at the
Been to
right
Israel a
moment.
few times. So.
You have? Yes.
Jerusalem.
Yes.
Well, actually, everywhere. So.
Sorry?
Been all over Israel 2 or 3 times.
2 or 3 times, right. And anyway, so the main theme of this museum is immigration. And I resonate strongly with that, because I am also a Jewish immigrant to the US, from the UK.
So they don't have a US accent.
So you can recognize my accent, yes. Which isn't too different from yours, I don't think. Although I had a group the other week who said, oh, you have just a little tiny bit of English vowels. So I said, well, I think I have more than that. But anyway.
So where are you from, and where are you?
I guess North London?
No, not North London.
No?
I'm from, well, where I last lived, Richmond Park.
Okay, Southwest.
Southwest, yes. And you?
Hertfordshire.
Hertfordshire, whereabouts?
Well, Bishop Stortford.
Okay, because I used to live in Watford.
Okay.
Oh, okay, yeah.
There you go.
Landsman.
Geography there. Yeah. Yes, okay. So as I say, I resonate strongly with that story. It's an important story in the museum. It's and what we would say is it's what we're telling is a specifically Jewish story in one way, but also in many ways a universal, not universal, but a very much bigger story of immigration, right? Okay, and I see myself there.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to make you.
That's all right. That's all right. Now, going along with the with immigration, the next theme is really about tradition versus change. I don't know if anybody's made any major relocations in their lives, but anybody who's done that knows that that is one of the big challenges. How much do you adapt to the new place you're in, and how much do you hold on to your old traditions and what you grew up with, or what you believe in, or just, whatever. So that balance of adaptation and change is a second theme, but it's very linked to the first. And the third is really around advocacy and service, and you'll see why that links in a few minutes. Any questions on anything I've said so far? No? Okay. All right, so we'll begin. And I have, one more thing I will say. This is a highlight tour. There's a lot here in the museum, and I will have to kind of keep you going just to give you the highlights. I do encourage you, if you have time, to circle back to anything that you're finding interesting and important to spends more time. We'll get this.
Oh, very good.
Yeah.
No, it's lovely. I think it's
Get those hands up and prove how. See how this goes.
US is of course a country of immigrants largely, but what makes the Jewish immigration a little different is that instead of having immigrants who are Polish Americans or Irish Americans, Jewish immigrants have come from all over the world, right? And that is because it says here, the Jewish people have been a wandering people, mostly not out of their own volition, but mostly because they've been expelled. I'm going to only mention one date. I don't want to load you down with dates, but this is first of all a date that you all know, I think, and that is 1492. What does that mean to you?
Christopher Columbus.
Christopher Columbus.
Spell expulsion.
And expulsion, exactly. So we've got two things. Columbus, we're all perhaps all of a certain age. And I say this deliberately because we all learned in 1492 Columbus sailed the ocean blue, right? But I do a lot with schools and they've never heard of it. So 1492 is important for Columbus, but also it is important for the very important expulsion of the Jews from Spain by Queen Isabella, the choice was convert to Catholicism or leave, and later Inquisition, and many were killed. So that wasn't but we'll see in a minute how that links to the American story. Some of you may know. Okay, so I'm also going to mention that the architect for this museum had all kinds of ambitious ideas. And one idea is that these bridges over here, that you see we go across, are all transitions. And while you are looking in this direction, I'm going to mention this too. We have a temporary exhibit at the moment, which is called Future Follows the Past. I think that's a very important name. And so, but curated by Jonathan Horowitz. And this is why we have this up. This is part of it. And the idea of these pictures that you see around is to really set some context for our story and also to ask some provocative questions. So I'm certainly not here giving answers to any of those questions, but you can see that, of course, it begs the question of whose land. So we've got foundations of freedom on the one hand, and whose land.
1654.
Yes, it's all about dates, our museum, and making it
Exactly. Well, asking the questions we're all asking, right?
Yes,
Or struggling with.
exactly. Well, especially since we're going to be on camera, but is the questions still there?
The questions are there.
So, okay, when did the first group of Jews arrive in this country, which was not yet the US?
1654.
54.
There you go. Yes, you see. But what is the connection? I'm going to connect it with 1492. Do you know where they came from?
They were Jews from Spain and Portugal.
They were coming from Recife, Brazil. Recife, Brazil. Why Recife, Brazil? Because, as we know, a lot of the early exploration was economic. So the Dutch West India Company was in Brazil, and where the Dutch West India Company was a safe place, a safe haven for Jews. So they were there, they built up a community, and some were traders, others all sorts of different things. And Portuguese took over in 1654, and they were taking the Inquisition with them, so they told all the Jews they have to leave within 3 months. Now those who had means went back to Europe, went to the Caribbean, but by 1654, those who didn't just got on whatever ship they could. They had no money, and they couldn't even pay for their passage. And we know that because we have a court document right here. And this court document is suing, captain suing, for the passage for these 23 souls, big and little. So we know there were children there as well. So they were rather bedraggled, and they arrive, and they ask, and how they arrive in New Amsterdam.